I think today we're going to have a little discussion around the looming recession, or supposedly the longest recession in certainly recent history, and really what that means for the tech market and specifically for us as B2B marketers, right? And how we can take advantage really of the situation and be one of the movers that's actually going to come out on top. And that's a really important thing, because we've got a lot of data on this now, a lot of data on previous recessions, which shows actually who the top performers are, what kind of things we need to do to be in that bracket, and equally what not to do, right? What pitfalls to avoid. So there's a few bits that we're going to talk today, a few, hopefully useful insights from conversations as well that we're having with our clients. But I think that is by way of an intro, hopefully that starts to get the juices flowing. And I think Orla, you're going to kick us off a little bit with a few. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, I mean, yes, there's a lot of data on previous recessions and how well the tech sector, has navigated its way through recessions in the past. But I mean, even looking more recently at what we saw, in the last 2 to 3 years in the pandemic, right? I think there are some key things, whether you're in the tech sector or any other, sector, but those that did well and do well in recessions have two key things in common, in that they put their foot down, they continue to push forward with investment, with momentum, with continuing to be visible and present in the market. And often they can get a greater share of that market because others take their foot off and retrench a little. And the other thing that is actually, they stay true to the strategy. So having a clear strategic focus on where you're trying to get to should remain the same. Your tactics and how you might go about, getting there need to pivot and adjust, but ultimately staying true to the strategy and the direction you're looking to go to. So I've definitely seen those two key things in the last couple of years, and those who grew significantly had those things in common.
That's so true as well. It makes me think back to the research by Binet and Field, right? The long and short of it, and that need to balance long-term strategy and short-term sales activation, right? And certainly in a recession, you get this sort of tendency to lean more towards short-term sales activation, but that's really problematic, because actually what you're doing there is, you may get some early wins, but it's not going to last. It's not going to sustain any significant growth. And actually, 2-3 years time, when all this is blown over, fingers crossed, right? What's happening, right? So yeah. I think that's so true. That point around sticking to your longer term strategy, keeping that longer term focus in mind is really, really key. Yeah. And that's years 1, 2, 3 years plus, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I call it the tactical tailspin. I've spoken about it before, right? So going too much into the short term cycle is one, highly destabilizing for your team, as well as not productive in the mid to long term for the business. It's very, very easy to fall into that. So that balance is absolutely important. I think just thinking again back to, more broadly as well, what we're seeing, so those two things are key, right? Stay focused on your strategy, have that balance of long and short, and keep your foot down. But actually what we're also seeing is that, well, how do I do that in the face of, either budget freezes, so budget staying the same, in some cases, some slight reduction. We're not seeing many companies talk about, significantly increased budget spends. And then on top of that, I spoke to a client recently. They were at GITEX and talking to, many of their peers, and all kind of saying the same thing around, actually headcount freezes as well. So not being able to recruit people into their teams and maybe even fill some open gaps. So you've got marketing leaders who are operating with, constrained budgets and constrained resources. So I think that really does focus the mind. I really need to be absolutely clear in terms of where are the areas that I invest in. What are the smart investments to ultimately deliver the results and get to where we want to as a business?
And I think that in and of itself is actually a really good opportunity, right? Because certainly what I've seen over the last few years is this almost over reliance on MarTech, and actually the a very significant percentage of expenditure which goes on to things like MarTech. And absolutely, there's a place for MarTech. Don't get me wrong, but I do think it's a really good opportunity to take stock of what you got. Are you actually using it effectively? Is it producing ROI? Can you prove that? Can you show the value of that?
Yeah.
Because actually, I would suspect that certainly for a lot of businesses, and there's a lot of research as well that's been done on this, where there is an acknowledgement that this has been an overinvested area, and actually it's a really, really good opportunity to take a look at that. So I don't know if you're seeing that similarly as well with your clients, Orla.
Yeah. I mean, you only have to look at Scott Brinker's famous, MarTech roadmap. There's just been this explosion of different vendors and very niche solutions. The challenge has always been within organizations, how do I stitch all these different kind of capabilities together? How do I make them talk to each other? How do I, get those economies of scale? And it's really, really difficult. And most people kind of fail to integrate really well. Therefore, you're investing in this technology that's not working in the best way, not delivering the results that you were hoping for and had planned for. So I do think people are now taking a really hard look, because it is one of the first areas that you can look at when you're thinking about how do I ensure I'm getting the best return from my budget spend. Am I utilizing everything to its fullest potential? If not, do I really need it? So I think that's where we're seeing that kind of cold hard look at the tech I've invested in. Is it the right technology? Is it doing what I thought it was going to do? Is it delivering the results that I need it to? And actually, I think we're seeing, there's a paring back of what I really need from a technology perspective, and then thinking more, you want a degree of agility. So again, maybe a shift from some of the really heavy platforms to some of the newer, more agile AI kind of platforms and applications that we're seeing. So it's not to say, tech absolutely has its place. Again, particularly back to where we're talking about limited resources, but it's the right technology at the right time and delivering measurable outcomes to the business. So that's something I'm certainly seeing as well.
It's going to come under such scrutiny in the coming months, particularly because she said we're all pretty much being tasked with delivering more, or certainly the same with less resource. So actually that ability to show, is this performing or not, is going to be, everything that we do as marketers is going to be under the lens, and MarTech is absolutely part of that, right? And I think just, adding to your point there, it still comes back to, do you have the right long-term strategy that we spoke about earlier? And that fundamentally comes down to, all the kind of core tenets that we would always be doing as marketers, right? Is the positioning right, the messaging right, the channels, the activation, all those core bits, right? I think all too often there's this sort of tendency to almost overlook some of those things and think that MarTech's going to plug a hole and be the silver bullet, which it just isn't. MarTech is there to augment and enhance what is already a solid strategy, and I think that context is always got to be kept in mind, kept front of mind, right, when we're thinking about these things.
Absolutely. I mean, I was going to say we may be slightly going off tangent here in terms of talking about marketing and recession, but actually, do you know what? If you think about how am I smarter with my budget and investments, because it's something I see that actually getting internal alignment, and we obviously work in ABM, and that's our specialism, but getting the internal alignment, there's always that ongoing friction, and I think that friction increases when you've got difficult economic conditions, and getting that alignment of accounts to target. So whether that's net new acquisition, existing customers, I think tech is sometimes being used as a way to almost circumnavigate some of those difficult conversations and alignment. So actually, can I point my tech at helping me to identify the right accounts? So with that account segmentation and account selection, when actually there's, there are other, there's internal data sources, there's internal conversations, there's qualitative insight that can be utilized, to help really select the most appropriate accounts to target that are going to deliver the results. So, particularly in the case of existing customers. And I think that, bringing it back to the recession, that is actually something that we see. It's always easier to retain a customer than acquire a new one, right? That's kind of 101. But actually now in a recession, thinking about how do we really, really focus and point our ABM at our existing customers, get that alignment internally as to identify who are the right customers and what are the plays, what are the upsell, cross-sell strategies, expansion plays into those existing customers. And I think, in terms of the return that delivers, again, jump in and share your examples, but, we certainly see in terms of benefits delivered to an organization, exponential returns from customer upsell versus net acquisition. It can deliver returns faster.
Well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, that came through right at the ABM forum last week. It still holds true, right? This principle that actually 80% of your revenue is realistically coming from about 20% of your accounts, and actually, if you take that even further, it's probably even more significant when you get right to the sharp end. So, focusing on those existing customers absolutely is something I'm talking to quite a few of my clients about at the moment. It's a tendency to be data led, as you were saying, right? Looking at your existing data, where those opportunities are, where the biggest potential ROI is almost always in with your existing customers. And I think that's a really important point, because it comes back to what KPIs you're tracking against as a business as well, and actually possibly adjusting those, because if everything is geared towards net new acquisition, it's going to be very, very difficult in this climate. And actually, you'll probably see diminishing returns. Not to say you shouldn't be doing it. There's absolutely a stream to keep touching that. But certainly, I think where ABM in particular is a really powerful tool is existing customers, and the size of the prize, as it were, is really, really powerful there. Another couple areas that I think certainly seeing a lot of movement on at the moment is the partner channel. So actually looking at where we can do either joint or sell through initiatives with our partners, carriers, vendors, whoever it may be. Again, a really powerful tool, right? Because actually, not only are you pretty much halving the bill, which is always a helpful thing, but actually you do have twice the resources to deliver against that, right? And it is a massively underexploited channel. I know there's a lot of stats floating around at the moment which are predicting the growth in this space to be really quite significant compared to a lot of the others. So it's absolutely something that I think we need to be thinking much more about how we activate that. And I think the other thing as well that I'm seeing is a really interesting one, and actually, it's something that a lot of us have been banging on about for a long time, right? Which is sales and marketing alignment. But actually, how do we really help sales? What does that mean? Because there's absolutely a tendency to pay that sort of term, sales and marketing alignment lip service. But the reality is if you did a bit of a litmus test, are you actually doing it? Like, genuinely, are you actually doing something meaningful in that space? And we've been talking to a lot of CROs and a lot of sales directors lately, and one of the biggest things that they're saying is, how do I get my guys ramped up and in market, and not just generating but closing pipe quickly? Because as much as we can do all this great stuff as marketers and build all these great collateral and campaign, the reality is that sales have got to be on the other end of that, the handshake and then ultimately closing it. So we've absolutely got a role to play in supporting them, right? So that's a really interesting topic at the moment, that sales acceleration piece. Are we getting the right insights through to the team? Are we helping them actually with the right content, the right comms, prioritizing their time? All those kind of fundamental things is absolutely something that we as marketers should be playing a very, very significant part in.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, and I think absolutely, being able to quickly ramp my account managers, bring them up to speed with, insights into the accounts that they're managing is a real concern for CROs and sales leaders. And I think it's something that actually, again, marketing are certainly picking up on. There was an interesting survey and data points recently from B2B marketing. So, I think 48% of marketing leaders identifying the lack of deep account insights as a real challenge. So actually, how do I get that knowledge, get that deep insight? One, to ensure my comms and my go-to-market is as effective and targeted as possible. But to your point, it also has a real meaningful benefit and value to the sales organization as well, in terms of ramping their team and really driving that alignment. So we've seen that for a little while, and I know it's something that we've been working to address, to close that gap. And you said there around Sales Accelerate as a key service that we've developed. But being able to kind of capture those qualitative insights of what's important at an account level, what's important at a named executive level, and who are the right people to speak to within an organization. And then, whether they're customer or acquisition accounts, oftentimes within existing customers, we have quite an operational relationship. But if I want to drive an expansion play into existing customer accounts, I may be dealing with different business units, different functional areas. I need to influence at a higher, more strategic level. So, even where there's an existing customer relationship, being able to supplement what we know about them already with those deep account insights, those executive insights, that contact level information is still a gap, I think, and a huge area to be filled for both sales and marketing.
Absolutely. And, almost just kind of summing up a few bits that we've said, right? There shouldn't be anything groundbreaking in what we've spoken about. It really does come back to do the basics well, because that will stand you in very, very good stead for whatever it is that, your particular strategy, right? Keep driving share of voice, keep your foot on the gas in a recession, because your competitors, some of them absolutely won't, and their lost market share is going to be up for grabs, right? So driving that share of voice is going to be really important, and will set you up for that long-term sustained growth. And I think the other bit that is also really key is being data-led, right? Understand what data you've got access to, and therefore where your opportunities are. And that's not just going to be in the net new acquisition. These are the accounts we'd love to work with. Look at your install base, your customer list. Look at your partner network. All those opportunities for upsell, cross-sell. We touched on a few others as well today, but absolutely, analyze those opportunities and focus on them within that as well. And that's ultimately what's going to stand you in really good stead. Nothing fancy, just do the basics well.
Yeah, agree. I don't think there's anything else I'd add. So well captured and summarized.
Well, hopefully it's useful.